I just turned on my record function, which I think some of you probably, or all of you heard, just to make sure we get a record of everything that may be discussed.
Is this a session where we get to ask questions?
We will, I can probably take some questions. I do want to make sure we start this process first. Is it Asia that I'm speaking to?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Asia. Yes, I will try to get some time here for questions to be answered. But let's open our chat if we could. Do people have access to their chat?
Yep.
All right, and you're seeing my screen?
Yep.
All right, so what I would like you to do is take some time here. I am not seeing the chat, so I have to make sure that I can get that going. But if you could start by answering this first question in the chat. So this question says that we've heard some suggestions for innovative housing solutions, including live-work spaces for artists and entrepreneurs and congregate housing, with a reminder that the town just did actually pass a bylaw for artists and live-work space in the industrial district. But these types of opportunities, these sort of small-scale shared spaces, do you think that these are worth exploring in the town, expanding these types of opportunities? Do you think that this is part of the solution to diversify housing opportunities in Arlington, or what concerns do you have about this? So if you could please put your answers into the chat, and maybe while that's happening, Asia, if you could share your, if you have a burning question, maybe I can answer it for you.
Thank you. This is Asha Kepka from Precinct 1. I actually live in East Arlington, and my question is about addressing infrastructure needs like electrical grid. Many East Arlington residents right now are experiencing power shortage on a daily basis, even before the heat wave happened. Pretty much every day. There are some people who are blind and relied on the clocks to function throughout the day. Some folks who have oxygen machines have been posting an Arlington list about the power outages. Eversource is our electric supplier, and they, after many citizens are calling, they told us that the issue is not the supply, it's the outdated infrastructure, which our town of Arlington is responsible for. So I am just concerned that this is a really important issue for existing residents who live in East Arlington, who rely on this outdated infrastructure. So is the town of Arlington also addressing the issue of outdated infrastructure as you are planning to increase the housing needs?
Yeah, I know that the town is looking at this issue. And if you were available for the beginning of the presentation, Judy mentioned, we are at the beginning of our process.
Right.
So that kind of feedback is great. That'll help us shape our investigations as we go further.
So is this infrastructure has been looked into, because this is going to be very costly step before we actually continue?
Yeah, no, I mean, it'll be ongoing, most certainly. All right, so I'm going to scan the chat just really quickly here. So we have some great responses here. Just scrolling down, bear with me a second. Going past the beginning. So it's an interesting qualification here, depends on what we define as an entrepreneur. Mixed use may be viable, but should be done in concert with the affordable housing overlay. Another response is, yes, I think this is worth exploring. Not sure why it hasn't happened yet. Too much debate. We really need to get things done.
I have a question. Are we answering just number 1 or all 3?
Number 1 is great. I was going to read number 2 right now. I mean, some people jumped ahead, and that's totally fine. But I'm just going to move ahead to number 2 right now. I wanted to make sure, in case anybody needed them right off, if that was helpful to anybody, that we had that opportunity. So on that second one, to what extent is the community comfortable trading off commercial and industrial uses for residential uses? So for example, strictly residential buildings in commercial zones. Is that okay with folks? Or is mixed use commercial residential a viable or better alternative? What are folks, if you haven't answered that question, please do put that in the chat for us. I'm noticing, if I could ask, there was an answer here from Guillermo that says BRB. If you could just let me know what that stands for.
He means he'll be right back.
Okay, that's the old guy in the room, not knowing the
Don't worry about it.
the shortcuts. Thank you, James. Okay, so some folks are concerned with the tax implications of this, but others acknowledging that the overriding demand is for residential. And some acknowledging that this is a unique time to be discussing this, as there are a lot of empty commercial spaces. More ambitious idea for creating our own Kendall Square. An acknowledgement that more residents bring more customers, helping our empty storefronts. Alright. Okay, and then I'm going to move us to question 3 and then see if there are any lingering questions in the chat that we can address here. So in this third one, we've heard many concerns about the housing needs of older adults. So maybe, this is where we're kind of looking for some local on the ground feedback. Can you help us understand, from your perspective as residents or people with experience in Arlington, what's the genesis of these needs? So we've heard a lot of statements, for example, that senior housing or older folks may need some housing choices. Is that because they want to downsize? Is that because they're sort of aging into disability? And are these different than the needs of other types of households, and how? So we have some folks acknowledging that there's some downsizing they think is happening. There are other resources other than different types of housing or assistance. Some folks are house rich but cash poor, simply can't sell the house and move. So a few people have mentioned some of the barriers here, which is something we're going to explore once you get into your following breakout groups, in terms of whether developers, for example, are just even willing to consider some of these things, what the collection of property ownership looks like. These are some great points that people have brought up, and those are going to be more the subject of following questions. Comment in the chat about seniors having to compete with parents looking for good schools and willing to pay a premium for that. Interesting. That was definitely one of the things that we saw as a draw for Arlington, people coming to live there for the schools. While we still have some time, maybe Kelda, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here. I just have a 2-year-old who's a big bad wolf in the background, so I needed myself.
That's okay. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. You just had a really interesting question response here about the community being deeply divided and that you thinking that's a bigger barrier than anything else. Didn't know
Yeah.
if you wanted to expand on that while we have a few minutes.
Yeah, so I think so I just ran for the Arlington Housing Authority Board. I lost in the election, but I guess I know a lot of stuff from it. He's a big bad wolf. Sorry. And so I think what I encountered is that there is like the divide. There are two sides where you either preach to the choir about affordable housing, and they absolutely agree that we need it, and we need to make progress, and things need to change. And there's another side that's deeply scared of change and doesn't want any change. And I think the biggest question is how to get over that, how to bridge that successfully. And I think that's the thing that nobody's been able to do. We've been able to agree on doing a lot of studies, and which are fine. But at this point, I think we found some best practices that we could put into place. But if they haven't been put into place, even try them out. It's all like speculation about would this work here? What would be the problem? What are people scared of? And it kind of ends there, or it results in another study and more, rules that against beat to death and kind of drop. And what I saw like in the AHA meeting notes going back to 2004 is that we've had the same things over and over and over again.
Yep.
I only moved here in 2016, but going back to 2004, it's the exact same thing over and over about zoning, the exact same issues over and over, and they haven't solved, even though best practices have been identified and evidence-based, so to me, me, the big question is, how do we get over that and get to the point where we can actually try it out to see if it works?
Oh, great. Thank you for that. And like I said, I think we're going to have, that is the type of thing that is going to be front and center in some of the questions that follow. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to sort of explore that a little bit. We are going to get transferred shortly. So thank you for that.
Okay, here we go.
Hello, everybody. I just went to 2 different rooms. That was exciting.
Me too.
All right. Folks, bear with me. I'm probably one of our slower facilitators when it comes to tech, but I will get us there. All right. And your last facilitator may have been fancy enough to show these questions one by one. And again, I apologize for my lack of savvy if that is the case. But we will do something similar, I hope, in that we want folks to answer these questions one by one. And I will take an opportunity to read through them and clarify or answer any questions about the question as it comes up. But if it's helpful to everybody, I do like to have the opportunity to read these off. And then if you could answer these in the chat, and I'll try to monitor that as we go forward. This first question is almost all new development in Arlington and everywhere requires a trade-off. So now we're talking about sort of location, where physically and what location can Arlington best support new housing development or redevelopment?
And you want us to use the chat? Is that what you said?
Yes, please. Were you folks talking in your last session? Were you sort of sharing ideas?
In our last session, we talked and we had all of us, we could see each other and we didn't look at the questions. The
No, we
moderator
never
read
saw
the
the question.
Okay.
We never saw the questions, yeah.
Okay. I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you.
And I'm going to just read.
In the session I was in, we did look at the questions, so it's not always the same.
I'll make sure that everybody's recorded. That's the most important thing. I'll get everybody's responses. But again, this question, I'll read through it again, is almost all new development in Arlington requires a trade-off. Where physically can Arlington support new housing or redevelopment? So where could new housing go? Where should redevelopment happen? It would be great for you to put your answers in the chat. That way we get a written record. But if we want to go round robin as well, we can. So Laura, for example, if you had a thought on this, a quick thought.
I like the idea of the housing being along Mass Ave in particular, and Mass Ave, Broadway, and Summer Street, the main thoroughfares. I think more multifamily housing can go in those areas and support the commercial. I also do think that there are some areas close to the highway that are good for commercial development, but I guess that wasn't actually the question. So I'll pass.
thanks. Nice and quick. Perfect, Laura. Thank you. Judith, how about you?
I'm not so familiar with Arlington's zoning and geography that I can fully answer that question. It does seem like there are only a few areas zoned for multifamily and more density. And I think it might be nice to open that up a little bit more. So it's not just Mass Ave and Broadway that are getting higher density areas. Although I kind of agree with Barbara in the chat about higher density around Alewife, but I know there's some environmental issues there with the wetlands. So that's going to be tricky. That's all I got.
Right, no, perfect. Thank you. How about you, Sanjay?
So I put a little bit in the chat, but basically I'd like, if we're going to talk about increasing density, right, I'd like to see us do some of that everywhere, right? I don't want us to go to one place and say, this is the place that's dense, right? If we're going to increase density, let's scale, every part of town somewhat to some extent, right? Mass Ave is a great opportunity for more of that, right? But we should back that up with more in our current single families.
All right, thank you. Ms. Jones?
I don't necessarily have an opinion on this. I'm just kind of listening in at the moment.
That's totally fine. Thank you. How about you, Barbara?
What? Did you say Barbara?
Yes, I did, Barbara.
I've been typing like a mad fiend.
Oh,
I'll pass.
All right, thank you, Adam.
Somebody else can have the airtime.
How about you, Adam?
Well, I'm still a fan of the master plan, the process that involved a lot of people in town. Everybody bought into. That's basically development along the business corridors, and the neighborhood's pretty much status quo. I think there should be some flexibility in that. But if there's going to be a major departure than that, we need to go back to the whole community and explain that and ask about that. That'd be a pretty big deal.
Let's see. You're on mute, Sue, if you are talking. Okay, maybe Elizabeth?
Hi, I think you broke up a little bit there. If you were talking to somebody else, maybe they couldn't hear you.
All right,
But I'll be glad to go. I actually am not a big fan of a lot of new development. I understand that there are a lot of people in town who believe that Arlington should be a lot denser than it is. I see problems with that. I'm just not sure that we can support a lot more development in town. Obviously there should be priority to any kind of development that brings in more diversity and more affordability. But I don't think just increased density in and of itself is a desirable goal.
there's limited capacity. And how about you, Matthew?
So yeah, I think in terms of the highest opportunity places, it would probably be along the Mass Ave corridor. I mean, specifically sort of mixed use stuff. There are cases where, it's a high demand area on public transportation that's, 1-story commercial, that there's just kind of a lot of, wasted space there. I think there could be rezoning of other parts of town. There are certainly some places not that far from Mass Ave that are R1 zoned, so you can only build a single family, but there are plenty of existing duplexes there from before the zoning bylaws went into place, and I think it would be fine to have duplexes built there going forward, and that would be an opportunity to, space out new development a bit more. But in general, I'd say that I'm generally in agreement with sort of the housing development plan to to focus more on areas that are close to commercial and public transportation.
Thank you, Matthew. And keep writing in the chat, folks, if you want to report anything for posterity there as part of our record. I think the last name I have on here that I didn't touch on is Emily Snyder. You're on mute, Emily. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, you might have called me. I've been getting some phone calls, so I had to leave the meeting. Probably along the Mass Ave corridor. I haven't thought a lot about it. I think we probably have to have more housing. I live in a very dense part of Arlington in East Arlington, so I haven't got the same concerns that people do with large pieces of land. We're the densest, so, and I love it. I love, but that's why I bought here too. I didn't want the suburban feel. I wanted much more the urban feel, so I love it.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to switch to our second question here. And this is about how the town spends money that it has. The town has money already kind of earmarked for housing initiatives. So the Housing Trust Fund is a fund that has money in it that can be put towards housing initiatives. And also the Community Preservation Act, a portion of that can also go to housing initiatives. So how do you think the town should prioritize those funds? Like what part of the problem or what part of the opportunity should they be going after with the funds that they have at their disposal? So again, hit the chat, take a moment to think about it, and then I'll start going around here. So some examples like the Affordable Housing Authority can provide support to nonprofit developers. This money can be used to help finance construction. It can be used to purchase a building and then put a deed restriction on it for affordable housing. So there's a lot of different ways these funds can be applied. And sort of, if you have any ideas about how it might be used or where it should be focused, we'd be interested to hear that. Adam is taking the principled approach. Great comment. I think the town should prioritize funds that deliver the greatest results for the least money. A fiscally minded person. So we ended with you, Emily. Maybe we'll start. Did you have a thought on this? You're on mute.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't know enough about the Housing Trust. I went to one meeting about it to learn about it, but has it actually been enacted now? Is that part of town meeting? Yeah. I'm sorry if I'm just not up on that.
No, I mean, this is kind of a technical question, so it's totally understandable that folks may not be familiar with the ins and outs of how an affordable housing trust works. How about you, Elizabeth? Did you have any ideas on this?
Yeah, I really believe that if the legislation is able to go through and the home rule petition is accepted by the state, that we could very easily be able to make our own decisions about how our affordable housing is distributed throughout the town. And I personally believe that it should be everywhere. I don't think we should be thinking about affordable housing as units that have to go somewhere. We should be thinking about housing in Arlington that's affordable and have it be as broad a base as possible for as many people as possible. So I'm very excited about it.
Adam, did you want to expand at all on your comment? No? Good? Okay. How about you, Judy?
I mean, a lot of it's going to depend on what the trustees think, and I assume they're going to be doing a lot of research as well. But but yeah, I think both rental and homeownership opportunities would be really great, and focusing the efforts on like more deeply affordable housing.
Great. Matthew, how about you?
I don't have a particularly strong take on this, just because, yeah, I'm not very versed on the details of exactly how this stuff is set up. I mean, the thing I put in the chat was just that, given the fact that town meeting just voted to increase the inclusionary zoning proportion to 25%, it didn't.
That did not pass.
All right, I'll have to go check my vote thing then. Yeah, never mind then.
Ms. Jones, anything to add to this?
Just a clarifying question. Are you guys talking about new affordable housing, or is some of this funding going to be used for the housing that's already here, the affordable housing that's already developed?
That is an excellent question, because it could be either. So for example, some money could be used for rehab. Some money could be used to continue a deed restriction that's about to expire. So maybe the housing was supposed to be affordable for 30 years, and the 30 years is coming up. So they could use money to sort of extend that out. So that's a great clarification. It could be either.
Okay, I mean, I do agree that definitely, I think it's definitely in this community. I mean, I think it's a societal issue as well, that housing prices are increasing and there needs to be more options for more demographics of people, whether you're single or your families. But I also want to come from an angle that we do have housing here already, specifically family housing that has been underserved in the community for a very long time. If you don't know about it in East Arlington, I suggest you start paying attention, because there are children here that are being impacted in the community. And I maybe want to see some of that funding going towards programs for those children to be uplifted out of the community and provide pathways out of poverty. If it does get sent to the local housing authority, like, I think the residents should have some say on it. I mean, like I said, I want more people to have housing in Arlington, but I do want some of the funds to maybe be used to lift up the people who are already in those situations and might have continued to be in those situations, and see how we can, like I said, I've seen in the comments, people do want people who are currently living in housing to be able to someday afford their own home. So maybe some of the funding being used to put those programs in the communities where people are being impacted already from living in those communities.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I got the warning on our timeline, so I just want to ask real quick if you could put in the chat, or what are the there's been a lot of talk about different strategies and things that could get passed, and we just had a little mini discussion here about whether the inclusionary zoning got passed and whether it didn't. How come things aren't getting passed? Like, what are the barriers? Put it in the chat real quick.
Hi, this is Lori Leahy. I'm
Yes.
wondering, am I in a breakout room now?
You're not. I am about to
Okay.
move everyone in.
Hey, it's Nate again.
James.
Sorry for kicking you out of the last one.
No problem. All right. So we've had a couple of different approaches, and so what I'm going to do with this. Oh, hi, Emily. Good to see you again. We are going to. I'm going to leave our format right here the way it is. So we're going to all see each other. I am going to ask you to use the chat. If I can get mine open. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to read you the questions. The first question that we want you to ask, and I am going to try to go round robin as best we could. You know, we are calling these questions kind of our opportunity for consensus, our opportunity to sort of come together on some of these issues. So just very broadly, it's kind of a high altitude question, but what steps, try to think as specifically as possible, what steps would help bring the community together?
But I will list out, oh, I'm sorry, Nate. I was attempting to fill in, but.
No, I just got bumped from my last meeting and I'm here.
Okay.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. Did you want me to take notes or?
If you would, great. How's everybody doing? See a lot.
Very well, thank you.
I think Miss Jones is the only repeat that I have here. It's good to see you again. All right, so I'll get us going real quickly here. I'm going to leave us all on the screen and I will bring the question to you. I do encourage you to use the chat to record any answers that you want to for the record. We'll have Fiona taking notes as well, which is great. Thank you, Fiona. But these are going to be our questions around sort of coming together and, kind of wrapping up this discussion if we could. This first question is a bit high altitude, but we do want you to try to think as specifically as you could. And it's what steps would help to bring the community together around the provision of affordable housing? What do we think people can agree on in Arlington? We tend to focus on what people disagree on these issues, but what is it about the provision of affordable housing that we think people can agree on? So use the chat, and then I'm going to go round robin here. So maybe starting on my screen on the bottom, I see Jonathan, and I will get to you, Joanne. I saw you raise your hand. I'm going to start with Jonathan, and then we'll go to you next, Joanne. Okay.
Are we talking or just writing? Sorry, Nate.
I'm going to ask you to do both. So I'm going to go round robin. Do use the chat. So, but what do you think about this first question, Jonathan? What can we do?
I think we could get everybody to agree that we need and should have available and or affordable housing for everybody. I think we differ on what that definition is, but I think safe housing for Arlingtonians, I think most people would rally around that concept.
Okay, very basic, sort of ground level. Joanne, you had your hand up early. What were you thinking?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Oh, good. I think people would agree, and I'm talking about people I talk to, my neighborhood, my friends, that real priorities should be, in terms of affordable housing, are the people at the lowest end of income or even homelessness, that this really should be the first priority of finding some way to finance housing. Inclusionary will not do it. And now we know that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is including people at 100% of AMI. Well, I didn't agree with it. I hope that they would make their priority that the lowest income people. We want to keep them in Arlington. They add diversity of all kinds. And I think that is one thing that if people understood what affordability, that's the kind of affordability they think of when you say affordable housing, not people at 100% of AMI. Thank you.
So focusing on the most vulnerable. I'm going to switch to, is it Winnell?
Winnell, thank you. This is a really, really difficult question because I think there, in Breakout group number 1, we talked about how emotional the issue of housing is for many people, and there's so many, headbutting. I tend to agree with Joanne. I think that focusing on those with the greatest need really brings home the personal aspect of this. And I think that as we see income disparity in this country and in the world continue to increase, I think a lot of people could get behind the thought that we need to provide for those who have the absolute least.
Great, thank you. How about you, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Joanne and Wendell, but I'm not sure that that's something that we will all agree on in Arlington. And I believe that there is it's a human right. It's a safe, affordable housing is a human right, and I think that's where we're all going to come together.
All right. Kristen, I noticed you just expertly wrangled your dog. Are you ready to weigh in on this question?
Well, I mean, my initial thought was, yeah, that it's entry level affordable housing that needs to be made available to people. I see a lot of people saying that they want affordable housing, but then whenever we try to pass articles at town meeting to encourage affordable housing, they seem to fail because someone always says, oh, well, that won't have the effect that we want it to. And it seems like there is a push in town, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it seems like there's a push for more development, more housing as a way to spread the tax burden that the town has. And there's never, it seems like there's never enough for the most needy people. We seem to put our focus on offering services in town to the greater population, I guess. People who don't have those needs. But I have decided that from now on, I'm just going to vote in favor of whatever the affordable housing articles are that come up that address the neediest people, because there's not a lot of income diversity in town. I've been here since the year 2000. And when I came in, it was possible for a single young professional woman to purchase a single family home. People that I know, especially women that I know, who are in their 20s or in their early 30s, they couldn't consider purchasing a home in Arlington, and even renting in Arlington, and really just the greater Boston area. It's off the hook. It's insane what people are paying for rents. And maybe I just show my age when I say that. I'm like, oh, well, when I candy bar 15 cents.
To connect people to stories, to real stories about real people. I think
yeah.
Sort of circling back to the question.
One thing that I understand is, why are we not discussing rent control? It's when I first moved to Boston.
I applaud you on that one, Kristen, because I've got two other people I got to talk to on the question. So Don, is there anything that you think we could use to bring the community together on this?
I'm sorry, did you call on me?
Yes, I did, Don.
Okay. I don't know if it's how to bring the community together in that they have so many different ideas about affordable, but I just want to point out that historically, one of the better characteristics of Arlington housing was the two-family. It was a way of upward mobility for people to gain equity who couldn't afford the single-family house, but found it economically feasible to buy the older two families, live in one half and rent out the other. And this has for decades been a source of our more affordable rental units. And the unfortunate trend now is that when these units come on the market, they're being torn down, rebuilt as larger duplex condo units, eliminating the rental aspect. And typically, Jonathan could probably confirm or deny the numbers, but I'm seeing things like 2 families being sold for around $900,000 and being converted into duplexes, each of which is selling for 900,000 to $1 million. So the affordability is going down. The rental base is going down also.
But one of the things you just mentioned, and maybe, it's sort of a roundabout way to getting to this question is, you started this by explaining the value of 2-family rentals to upward mobility and as a reflection of the historical development trends. We heard that in other groups. So I think that's a great way to sort of get at this question. Ms. Jones, we hadn't had a chance to hear from you on this first one.
Can you remind me what the topic was so I can stay on topic?
Like what steps could we take to help bring the community together around this issue? Like what are some things that we think people could rally around or agree on to move this forward?
As far as affordable housing, like I said in the previous group and now with new people, we have an affordable housing family development that's down on the east end of Arlington that could definitely use some love and attention. I think some development could be put into that. I think what would rally, I don't know what would rally people around this issue so that we see more of it across the town. My personal view is that people need homes to live in. People deserve a home to live in that's clean, that's safe. There's one of the reasons I've loved being in Arlington for so long and I grew up here is that there's so many parks to go to. When my son was younger, like I could pick a different day of the week and we could be at a different park. And I just feel like kind of coming from that aspect of just people deserve homes to live in that are affordable.
Great. All right, I'm going to take us to our next question because I know we'll get cut off. How can the town balance concerns about housing needs and natural resource protection? Right, there always seems to be kind of this tension, and some would argue that doesn't necessarily have to be. But how do we balance these concerns about the perception, the idea that we need housing, and we also need to protect our natural resources that we have? So again, please use the chat. And then I am gonna go round robin and maybe starting, I'll put you on the spot, Carol, if you have a thought about this. It's tough to be first. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I grew up in Arlington. I still literally live in the house that I was born for all intents purposes and have lived in for 57 years. So I've been lucky. But I will say that growing up, a lot of my friends don't live in Arlington. They moved out. They live in other communities, have raised their families in other communities because they haven't been able to afford to buy in Arlington. And I think one of the big dynamics that we are challenged with is, there's a lot of families who are coming to Arlington who have very high disposable incomes. And I think that they are lovely families, but they have different needs and priorities than someone that may not have that disposable income. So I think, this is who's moving here and they are interested in the parks and they're not, as interested in worrying about, creating more affordability because they're trying just to meet their mortgage payments and get their kids to school and soccer practice. So I don't have an answer of how we mesh the two worlds. When I do real estate locally, so I see it, I think part of it is that we're not working together and it is the two conflicting groups. And, I think that some of it is they feel like I don't have to be worrying about this. I have to worry about my mortgage payment. And I don't have an answer. Sorry.
No, and this is part of this, why we're having this discussion. Some of these questions are very challenging. Wendell, do you have a sense, a thought about this balancing of housing needs and natural resource protection?
I don't know if it's possible to, not to be a total downer, but I don't know if it's possible. I feel that one thing that is going to be coming our way pretty soon is going to be a push to end single family zoning. And, you know, I live in a very, very small single family house in an R2 zone surrounded by R6 at the end of the street. I've got subsidized apartments. It's a real mishmash of Arlington housing, and I love it. But I also really love to go for a walk up by the golf course at in Morningside. I will never in this lifetime or the next be able to afford one of those houses, but I love to go up there. I love the spaciousness. I love the green. I love the sense that, oh my God, look at that. Look what they've done with that lawn. That is so beautiful. And I really fear that we are going to lose that. And it's, you know, when you balance that against somebody who needs a home, it sounds so selfish to say, oh, but I have to give up my evening walk and seeing all of this beauty. So I don't know if we can balance the two.
That's the answer. Joanne, did you have a thought on this?
I certainly do. I think people have to realize that we're in now a very dangerous position in terms of climate change. The studies have shown that trees in urban suburban areas are the most effective way to remove carbon from the atmosphere, to cool neighborhoods, to keep from having hot spots, of which now 5 have developed in Arlington. So we have to think about quality of life. And one of the earlier meetings, people said, well, we don't see Belmont and Winchester asking.
Okay, I think everyone's back. So I'm going to hand this back over to Judy and Alexis. Oh, Judy, you're on mute.
No.
Oh, sorry.
I just saw it. Alexis, do you want to bring the slides up again?
Sure
Super.
thing.
Let's go down to where we are. Okay, so next steps. Next steps are simply this. We have a lot of work to do. We're continuing to do research and looking at, market data and demographic data, and we have more talking to do, with people. I think that sort of toward the end of the summer, we'll be producing kind of a draft of the needs assessment, kind of with everything that we learned, both from you folks this evening, from our research, from other kind of conversations with the community. If you go to the timeline, Alexis, that would probably help.
Sure. Sorry, I was having
it's fine.
Technical difficulties.
Well, I know I had my share tonight too. So this again is the timeline. I know you saw this before. There is this discussion coming, a community conversation sponsored by your Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office on fair housing that's coming up on July 13th. And you may want to check the town website if you're interested to find out about that event. From our point of view, it's really working on this needs assessment over the summer and developing what we think are plausible goals to submit to the planning department for discussion with the Housing Plan Implementation Committee. Around in September, there will be another community engagement forum to kind of vet the things that we think, that we found, that we are thinking might make sense for this plan. There will be, another forum when the housing plan is essentially in all draft form. And then eventually what happens toward the end of the fall is that the plan is presented to the Arlington Redevelopment Board and the Select Board, because both those boards have to approve the plan in order for the plan to be submitted to the Department of Housing and Community Development. So there's quite a bit, left to do here. We're certainly not done yet. And Kelly, did you have something that you were trying to add up there? I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. There will be the town has a webpage sort of for this project. And one of the things, if you're interested, if you have more that you want to say to us that you didn't get a chance to say this evening, if you go to that page, there will be a link to a Google form that will take you to the same questions you saw in the discussion, the breakout sessions tonight. And you will be able to tell us more that, if you have thoughts after this meeting that perhaps you didn't get a chance to present, or that you've thought about, sometimes when I walk away from a discussion, I think, why didn't I say that? Well, if you have a why didn't I say that moment, you'll be able to kind of say it in that Google form, and we will get those comments. So that's really where we are and kind of where we're going. And I think really that's it, Alexis, if you want to take us to the final slide here. We want to thank you for participating. Jenny, did you, or Kelly, do you want to kind of close out, or are we just going to sign off at this point and say thank you very much?
Jenny, I'm just happy to close out. I did post a link to the Housing Plan Implementation Committee website in the chat. We will also be following up shortly with a press release, a link to the recording, and the slides, which will all be posted on the Housing Plan Implementation Committee website. Jenny can add to this if she wants to, but I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to come out, and I hope everyone felt like they had a productive discussion. I'm really looking forward to hearing a summary of everything that was discussed. Jenny?
Sure. Thank you, everybody, for participating. This is really the beginning of the process, and we would love to hear any feedback from you. That's the point of participating with the Google form or in any other medium that you would like to communicate with us, so that we can understand a little bit more about your ideas for the plan as it's evolving and developing. The timeline and all of the other materials, as Kelly and others have noted, is on the website. We are going to have a summary of the entire meeting, as well as the recording and any other report outs posted and available hopefully early next week. And we'll be looking forward to following up with you. I know that there are many, many more voices in Arlington who would be wonderful to participate in this plan. If you know somebody else, how about everybody in this meeting, please share this information with 5, 10, 15, as many people as possible to get them to participate and be part of this process. And if there are other people who you'd like to bring in, just let us know. We'd be happy to follow up. We really appreciate your time tonight and your energy. And I think that's all. Thank you very much.
Oh, Jennifer, yes, feel free to share that. I see your question about filling out the form. Yes, there's a direct question about if you attended the meeting or not. I'm sorry, Jenny, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to make sure that that was addressed, that can be shared with anybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.